This is Tchipakkan, and I am the host of Changing Times, Changing Worlds, Otherworldly show. And tonight's guest is, I'm so excited. I'm doing my little fangirl thing. Well, you know, it's very exciting. I'm a historian, so I love somebody else who does it. Aidan Kelly is an author. He is an elder. He was there. He was the, oh, don't you dare make a phone call. Somebody else say something quick while I get rid of. No, go away, John. I am not talking to you. Stop, John. Go tell John that I'm not, that I'm in the middle of the show. Thank you. Anyway.
Yeah, Zoom meetings are like this.
Yes. Yes, that is indeed how it goes. Okay, so basically, I was fangirling about Aidan Kelly, who's his story. He has written some of the coolest stuff about the early bits of the Neo-Pagan movement. He founded the new Reformed Orthodox Order, the Golden Dawn, which I think had to have been tongue-in-cheek.
Wasn't just me.
I have just started reading hippie commie beatnik witches, which is about that. I like the inventing witchcraft, but apparently that got you into a bit of trouble because some of the Gardnerians said, "Hey, this is heresy. We are a religion that has continued since the Dark Ages."
Right.
And,
well, you know, I tried being a practicing Catholic for a while, for 10 years, for the sake of my sobriety, and then had to get out because it bothered my conscience too much. But since I had already completed my doctoral studies in New Testament, because I wanted to know how Christianity and Gnosticism actually got started, you know, I discovered at that point that, in fact, I did not have to believe any kind of historical or political or metaphysical nonsense in order to be a practicing Catholic. So as sure as hell, I'm not going to believe anything like that in order to be a witch. And the problem with the Gardnerians is they'd rather subscribe to childish ideas about history than deal with the facts, you know, because I'm trying to deal only with the facts in what I've written. Yeah. So yeah, that's my take on that.
well, I do wonder if you were going to come out with the book again, would you? So the only thing I've really heard people criticizing you for is that some people were outed and they didn't want to be. So would you name names, or would you try and give people pseudonyms to protect their anonymity if you were going to do it over, if it wasn't too late?
Yeah, that's what I've done all along. I mean, nobody can come up with a person I supposedly did this with. You know, it's basically malicious gossip. And I don't have time at my age to waste time on that.
No. Yeah. And nice thing about being this age is that, and you're still a little older than me, that you can, that you don't, you're not ambivalent about being an elder.
Well, I'm older because I'm 80, you know.
Yeah, I am a crone. So, well, why don't we start out? Let's start instead of end up with the plugging part. Okay. Tell us about the work, the class that you're about to plan. You're not stopping. You're still going on. So tell me what the class is that you're doing.
Okay. Well, what got me started on this must have been about 6 months ago, just looking at things online like Facebook. And there are these posts on the order of, I just discovered I'm a pagan. Now what do I do? Or can I work a spell by reading it out of a book? And so on. And I'm looking at this thing, you know, these poor newcomers don't have access to good information. For one thing, they have no idea how to sort out the good information from the nonsense. which Facebook and such like is riddled with. I thought, well, maybe, I mean, am I morally obligated to try to do something about this? And I said, well, maybe, but if I can try starting a class that gives people solid, moderate information that they could build on and know that what the standards are for sorting out good information from bad. So I started doing that. The first class began in October, and it was about half divided between relatively new people and real old timers. And the second class that I finished up back in, when did I finish it? About in March. Again, about the same distribution. And what I discovered is it's the old timers. I mean, people who've been on this path for 20 years or more, liked what I was doing because it was giving them new information that they'd never had before. And even if they knew how to do psychic readings, the system I taught them gave them even more control over what they were doing. Because I mean, most people who do psychic readings figure out how to do it by trial and error, and generally don't have a very efficient way of doing it. So what I do in the course is I'm teaching a system that I learned from Helen Palmer, clairvoyant reader, which she had invented just for her own sanity, because she had what the Grops call a spiritual emergency, where all of a sudden her psychic talents burst into consciousness. And she thought she was going crazy, because people usually do. So she went and got herself some training from other psychics and worked out this system of using guided meditations in order to awaken and develop the psychic talents and have them under conscious control. So what I do in the class is a series of 7 meditations out of the 8 classes, gradually. And I provide a model, at least, of how the subconscious mind works, because it's our real interface with the psychic, what we experience as the divine, and so on. And it's about as scientific as I can manage, but at least it provides a consistent model so that you can understand and control what the psychic stuff is doing. And you particularly have to deal with the fact that all such things are controlled by the muse. Writers, forever, have experienced, a burst of information that's coming from a feminine personality. I was just thinking this morning, well, it's probably what Plato was meaning when he talked about his daimon, his spirit guide. So I fleshed that structure out with other information about the nature of the craft as a religion, lots specific techniques for types of readings, and then I finish up with the ethical guidelines, because there are some, partly from Gardner, partly from professional readers, and so on, about how to do psychic readings and magic safely and ethically. Because that can be really tricky territory, but you have to show people how to defend themselves and avoid the quicksand. So I provide all of that as well. At least I try to.
I think that kind of happens on social media anyway. My 40-year-old daughter suddenly finds herself teaching the 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
I love that you said that, use the phrase, I discovered I'm a pagan. I don't think that there is a lot of conversion in the Christian sense. I'm going to choose to learn about this religion and adopt it. It's like, no, you figure out that word describes you, and then, and as you said, what do I do now?
Yeah, well, it's a situation. Shelley Rabinovich, if you know,
I love her.
teaches her at University of Ottawa, and she said that when she was doing her master's thesis, she was out interviewing pagans at festivals, find out who they were and so on. And she discovered the one trait among all of them that was the most common that she could identify was that they felt that they had been abused, either physically or emotionally, by or in the name of the church they were raised in. So when they got old enough, they walked away from it and went to see if there was some other spiritual path that worked better for them. And these are the ones that have found paganism. Yeah, and you can just see that description. I mean, the Pew Research has reported at this point, formal church membership is below 50% of the U.S. And I think the Pew Research people know better, but they count everybody else as nuns. Well, the nuns definitely include all of the pagans, because the few people haven't figured out how to identify them yet.
Yeah. I am trying to kind of have lost that along the way. I write a book about, I think there's a lot more pagans out there who just aren't in the numbers. They say that current estimates are around 2 million pagans in America. And I think it's a lot more than that.
Oh, no. Pew Research says it's 15 million. That there are more pagans than there are Presbyterians.
Yeah.
But
I think a lot of people are just happy to have figured it out, and then they get on with their lives.
Yeah.
So other than helping poor people who haven't figured out what they do next, what other than your classes, are you working on any other books or?
Well, yeah. I have 11 books available on Amazon right now. 4 are poetry, 2 or 3 are histories, a 3-part novel like this.
What's the name of the novel?
The Initiation of Eddie Edwards.
Oh, I'm writing that down. I got to look for that.
It's all about witches and Gnostics, and I had a lot of fun with it.
Well, Gardner started out with fiction, so.
Yeah, true. Well, one good thing that's happened is, because of sending things out, I got contacted by Holly Emor at Cherry Hill, and she referred me on to their dean, Candace Kant, whom I've been communicating with, and I've given Candace a course outline, and I'm working on putting together a sort of a textbook or reader on the Eleusinian mysteries, which was one of my doctoral topics at the GTU. And again, this is, so when I finish the book, as soon as I finish the book, which ought to be pretty soon, I can get it up there. But then hopefully I'm going to be able to teach classes for Cherry Hill starting in the fall. So Candace hasn't formally hired me yet, and I don't want to put a jinx on it, but I'm hoping this works out. She seems pretty positive with that at the moment. So I'll try not to blow it.
We don't want to jinx it. But I would love to that sounds like something I would be interested in. I'm kind of hoping, because this is a kind of an intimate format, can you tell us any good stories about when you were young and silly?
Well, that covers a lot of territory. What kind of stories would you like? The first time I got drunk, whatever.
Well, I don't know. You've done so many things. You were Gardnerian. You were involved with Feri. Did you know Gwydion?
Oh yeah, one of my best friends in the world.
Dana Corby. Dana Corby.
Oh yeah, I'm in touch with her. She lives not far away from here.
Oh, cool. I just met her. So, see, I'm in New England, so when I say met, I mean on the internet.
Yeah.
So, but she too is not good with Zoom, and so we haven't gotten her for the conference yet or anything. But
too bad, because she tells good stories. I know.
I know, and I love her books too. But I'm here to pick your brain. So, but there's a lot of us here who came into it in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and would love to find out what was going on back then.
Okay, well, Okay, well, this is kind of a summary of what's in the Hippie Cummy Beatnik Witches book, which I thought was a wonderfully funny title to think up.
It's a great title.
Okay, well, when I was 14, I had a spiritual awakening that I won't go into, which ended my being a Catholic at that time. Went looking for information and came across a book called Witches Still Live by Theda Kenyon, published in 1928. I've yet to figure out who she was, why she wrote the book. I just haven't found any connections. The book begins with a very good summary of Leland's Aradia, the Gospel of Witches of Tuscany. And I read through that because, I'm beginning to search for something new. And, wow, a female messiah figure, free love, dancing naked under the full moon, so on and so forth. And, my thought of 14 was, wow, that's original. I like religion I'd like to have if I could ever find it. So about 4 years later, I found a copy of Gardner's Witchcraft Today in the San Francisco Public Library. Books like that could be left on the shelf and not get stolen at that time. Read through that and recognized, yes, this is the same kind of religion. It was. And I started looking for books about that. Found, steadily over the next 5 years. And I gathered what information I could out of the books, just details of things that were said and done in the craft, in rituals. So about, in 1963, my girlfriend, Sarah, and I talked a lot about mythology and everything else, and speculate about the idea of maybe it'd be a way to create a witches' Sabbath. And that idea was there. And then in the fall of '67, I was back at school doing my master's thing. Sarah came over to me and said, well, she was taking a course on ritual, graduate seminar, from James Broughton, filmmaker. And the term assignment was to come up with a ritual that everyone in the class could participate in. And did I think I knew enough about witches actually did to write a ritual like that? I said, well, yeah, sure, okay. So I put together my notes and came up with an outline, and she liked it, and Broughton liked it. So she said, here, beef it up. So I did, and came up with the first version of the very basic word ritual. And we came up that term because Sarah came from her class and said, well, my classmates are asking who we are. And we didn't have a name yet. So we talked about, well, naming ourselves after the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And played around with it and came up with a full name. And Sarah said she'd later explain to the class, well, we were new because we weren't the old one. And we were Reformed because the old one was dispersed. But we're Orthodox because we're trying to do it right. And so that's how we came up with the name. So we had a crew of 13, as it happened, who got together to rehearse the ritual, put it on for the class, and as a theater piece, it went okay. But we were already speculating about what kind of effect should this ritual have on us, and doing it as a play for a class, it really didn't have an effect. But at for summer that year, we had our annual neighborhood picnic on Angel Island. A couple of people wanted to get married, and so we persuaded them to let us do it, using the ritual as a basic format for a wedding. It was on a steep hillside covered with branches. We couldn't even dance, but it went okay. And then sitting around afterward with beer and potato salad, talking about it, we realized that people were saying, this time I thought I felt something unusual. So we got all excited about that. Said, okay, let's try doing this right with all the bells and whistles. So for Lammas 1968, we did that in a redwood grove in the front yard of the parents of one of our priestesses. We had about 50 people in the circle. We had people drumming, and we danced, and we danced. And by the end of the ritual, we were stoned on the energy. We were just stoned, walking around giggling. And that bonded us into essentially the order. That we knew we had something and we were going to go with it. So, we proceeded then to tinker with the ritual and somewhat rewrite it. And we would start doing Sabbats outdoors whenever there's good weather. Starting in '68 and on through. I mean, the Ru did that for years with public rituals. And, as we started meeting witches elsewhere, they were astonished that you could do a ritual outdoors. Well, 1968 in San Francisco, you had anti-war protests, civil rights marches, student strikes, and so on. And our having a peaceful little circle out in the park was of absolutely no interest to the authorities, so nobody ever bothered us. And so about 1971, we ran into Gwydion. About that time, I and all three of our priestesses were living nearby on Bernal Heights, which was a real power spot. I mean, most of the Peace and Freedom Party members of starting a new party live right on Bernal Heights. And right across the street from me was where Randall Garrett lived, with his Society for Creative Anachronism, of course. And so one day I heard the blaring of a horn. Came down to see what it was, and there was a car there on fire with this large jolly man reading the Anglican Wake over it. Well, the car belonged to Gwydion. So I got to stand around and talk with the large jolly man about who we were and like that. And so he went back upstairs and said to Gwydion, there's a couple of witches living uphill from you. And Gwydion said, "You're kidding." He says, "No, they seem to be serious. Check them out." Well, the large jolly man was Van Tipton. He was the first Gardnerian high priest in California, though he hadn't been made that yet. So we and all of our crowd gradually got to know Gwydion during the following years. And, the Naru history and the Feri tradition history really got totally interwoven during those years. It was, working with Gwydion and Allison, we came up with the structural idea that made the covenant of Elves possible. I have a long poem about Gwydion. One of my books is called Songs for the Gods and Witches, and there's a long poem about Gwydion in there because I really missed him. He was a strange man, and he had problems, but he was also wonderful. His songs are being re-recorded by some wonderful musicians in New Jersey. And hopefully they will have the project out pretty soon.
Yeah, you can get his albums on Amazon, and which is exciting because I had them on tape back when you could get tape players, and I grew up, as it were, with listening to Gwydion's music, these songs, The Old Religion and The Fairy Shaman. And he's a freaking hard act to follow for all of the people who write music for pagans since then.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing that Jimmy and Josh are doing is they're recovering songs. I mean, they're keeping Gwydion's music and words, but they were interpreting it differently. And my Lord of the Dance version, they've also covered. They sent me whatever the format is of it, and doing it is a lot like a bluegrass hymn, and it's just wonderful. And they're doing the same thing with Gwydion's work. So it'll be very valuable and a lot of fun when it comes out. Yeah.
When have musicians not covered each other's songs?
I'm sorry.
I said, when have musicians not covered each other's songs?
Oh, well, yeah, of course.
But
Yeah. Well, does anybody else have any questions? One thing I know about myself is I'm a lot better off answering questions because then I know what people want or need to hear, whereas I'm likely to go off on some kind of tangent nobody's interested in all.
well, I do think I asked people before you got here, and they are they want to hear you ramble. They want to hear all of your old stuff. I'm trying to guess what was going on, you know, what people would like. Okay, you've told us about your meeting Gwydion. How about Oberon? And I assume you knew Oberon Zelland, and I'm spacing her name.
Morning Glory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because,
well, yeah, I met Oberon. This is back when he was still called Tim, which he hates people to call him, because he was in touch with Gwydion.
yeah.
And in 1972, Tim and Julie, that he was with at the time, came out to California and had a vacation for a couple of weeks and just went and met everybody in California who had been pen pals. And so that's when I met him, when he came to see me also, because Gwydion told him to. And he and I have been in touch ever since. You know, he's living in Redmond, just north of me now, in Longhouse, which is been a meeting place for craft activities for years. I think he's doing okay. I ought to check on him again.
Yeah, I get posts for I see the things he posts every so often. It was back at a conference called Craftwise. It was in Connecticut that I met him and Morning Glory, and it was just so. These were people that I had read about, and it was so cool to just chat with them. And they were nice. I got such a good hug from Morning Glory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, rambling. I'm good at rambling.
Yeah.
Ramble all over the map. But having specific questions does help.
I know. I'm sorry. I tried to drag them out of people, but it's like pulling teeth. And considering how difficult pulling teeth is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my next class that I'm starting, I'm absolutely committed to starting it this coming Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, for 2 hours.
Important question. Oh, here's a question for you. How much?
Well,
we're supporting our elders.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, I'm hard about this. I mean, having extra money for my household, you know, is important. Just getting the information into the hands of elders who need it, will put it to good use, is also important. So I've talked to other teachers who do this kind of thing, and they said, well, no, for what you're teaching, like 400 is full tuition is perfectly reasonable. But honestly, for the 8 weeks, if people are willing to pay $25 a week for the 8 weeks, that's adequate.
Yeah, $25 a week is quite inexpensive for a lot of these this type of thing.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
I've also discovered a couple of times I've let people on out of pure charity, just free. They don't stick around. They don't value what we're doing, so they just walk away. No, paying the $25 is important, because people don't get that the way our brains function, if we're not paying something like tuition for what we're learning, our brains don't understand they're supposed to be learning anything.
This is the same thing that happened with Yusui, with when Yusui was doing the healing, in Japan, and when he was developing Reiki, and he discovered that the same people were coming back to him with the same problem over and over, and that's why he started charging, because if he didn't charge, they didn't stay healed.
Yeah.
So it's a thing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people think, because we have this reluctance in the craft to charge money, people, extend that beyond what is intended to apply to. You don't have to pay for initiation in the craft and to be a Catholic or anything else, but you're not entitled to get a free college education. You're not entitled to get services like tarot readings for free, because the tarot is not peculiar to the craft. I learned it years before I connected anything with the craft. And
John, can you intercept?
it applies to college. If you go to college for free, it's very hard to learn anything you don't know you're supposed to be learning. The brain, your mind just will not cooperate. It's also why it's impossible to argue with people who seem to be very misinformed. They're not interested in learning anything.
Yeah, that would be the old thing where you can't pour anything into a cup that's already full. You've got to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. But yes, you do need to. It seems to me that back in the old days, back in the 60s and 70s, if you joined a coven or you joined a group, they taught you. They sat you down and they taught you the astrology, and they taught you whatever, several forms of divination, all kinds of things. And until you had spent that year and a day learning the basics, you were not supposed to start doing stuff. Now, admittedly, people can learn on their own. And it's really irritating when you get into your 40s and 50s and people are like, well, you've got to, this is the way we're set up, and you must take your first year without, as knowing that's like, can I test out of it?
Well, actually, sometimes people can, on certain things.
On certain things.
Yeah.
Hard to test out of humility.
Very few witches understand the virtue of humility.
Yeah, that is a true thing. But well, it's a very Christian virtue. It's not a Wiccan virtue. I really think witches they're empowering because they're teaching people to embrace power, which is not a Christian thing. Obedience, not so much. A lot of the Christian virtues are not highly prized. Thinking for yourself is highly prized. But you do need to learn the material.
Yeah. Well, it depends. People's experience can be very different. I guess topic I really don't want to get into deeply because it's being a real political problem now. But there are certainly some people in the craft, some traditions, where their approach to initiation is really legalistic. They're concerned if you go through all the prescribed things in the Book of Shadows for initiation. If you do all of those things and the person is legally initiated, they're really not concerned with whether the initiation worked, whether it was a transformative experience. Okay. On the other end of the scale, you have people who don't have a prescribed script for initiation. That you make it up as you go along in terms of what that person needs. Okay. Victor was like that. You never knew what Victor was going to do for initiation because it was his take on personal psychology. So we do have a big dialogue going right now about the legalist often just don't get that a transformative experience is even possible. And so it turns out to be a big fight. On the other hand, I certainly have known some very powerful priestesses who did understand that that kind of experience is possible, though they've never had it themselves. You know, someone who's never had it, doesn't know it's important, is certainly not going to be able to teach it. But the priestesses who haven't had it, but do understand that it's possible for people, make it possible. You know, and hope to receive that gift for themselves. You know, this sort of experience is conferred by the gods. You can hope for it, but you can't expect it. It's their choice about whether it's good for you. Sometimes people are given this experience out of the blue when they're and they'll have no context whatsoever for something like this happening. And it's probably happened to a lot more people than are aware of it, because it's the kind of thing people don't talk about because they don't understand it. You know, and so a lot of people think they're crazy. You know, but
we don't need that.
no.
No, I feel that I describe it as the occult is like sex in Victorian England. Everybody did it, but it wasn't polite to talk about it in public.
Yeah, right.
And I think everybody is psychic. You know, maybe you're a healer. Maybe you're an empath. Maybe you're precog. Maybe you're a really good dowser. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can do all of those things.
No.
But it's you have to. But getting some context and getting a willingness to admit that it's real. This is the big challenge of changing times, changing worlds, is to get people to just relax and say, "Oh yeah, we do that."
Right. No, I've suggested to Candace at Cherry Hill, it's just sort of taken out of this course that I'm doing, is you have a class on the psychology of clairvoyant reading. Just things sound great. At other schools, trying to teach about the psychology of clairvoyant reading stops dead, because you're dealing with people who don't believe it exists, don't want to believe it exists, and are going to fight against everything you want about it. You know.
Oh dear.
Aidan? Are you there?
It's really useful for survival. So I figure actually everybody does have the psychic talents. The bell curve is in the distribution of consciousness. Some people are just simply not aware of having the talents. Other people are very sensitive to them. So again, you know, one of the advantages of Helen's system is it gives you a way to tap in and awaken up those talents and then begin to strengthen them.
Yeah, okay, you froze for a little bit. So
Okay.
I was just thinking maybe the gods wanted to keep the upcoming class a secret until you got the syllabus ready. I think that's a brilliant one. One of the panels we've had at Changing Times, Changing Worlds was trying to work with when you have mental illness and you're psychic, to be able to get a therapist who will accept the fact that maybe it's schizophrenia, or maybe it's the gods talking to you, and how to tell the difference, not how to medicate the gods away.
Yeah, I know. Well, in my own family, my older son, Aidan Edward Orion Kelly, has some serious mental problems. Though, with the correct help, he's doing okay. But one thing that happened recently, he finally connected with some psychiatrists who didn't think he was just delusional about what he can do. He's extremely psychically gifted, and sometimes that's absolutely batshit crazy. But he knows that. He says he hears voices all the time. He just doesn't believe them. He gets information from them, but he doesn't trust them. He's worked a system out to be able to handle it. And I think that's true not as strongly as it is for him, but for other people. The current concept of being neurodivergent. We don't all have the same kinds of minds. And our minds can differ in ways that a great deal of psychology and psychiatry just doesn't cope with, like the whole phenomenon of synesthesia, where people perceive numbers as having colors and can see sounds, and their perceptions are organized very, very differently. Well, I have not yet seen anyone who tries to draw out the significance of what these kind of experiences say about how our minds actually work. One of the things I know important, as Sir Roger Penrose, who won the Nobel Prize last year, has a couple of important books. And in one of them, he makes the point that it's clear that our minds have a quantum aspect that is simply not can't be modeled. The idea of artificial intelligence being able to do what the human mind does is technically completely ridiculous at this point. We do not understand how our minds work. And he says, we need a theory as far beyond quantum mechanics as that's beyond Newton before we'd even have a chance of understanding how our minds work. And that's the situation we're facing. That we can understand as much as we can understand about psychic talents and how the subconscious mind works and like this. But there are still aspects of consciousness that just are beyond us. We don't have a clue, not yet.
Yeah. It makes the conversation so much easier if you start from the premise that this stuff is real.
Oh, yeah.
There has been work on that.
Really?
Dr. Penrose and a neuropsychologist found that there's quantum effects with microtubules, and they're oriented in a very specific set of ways. And their use of anesthetics show that it actually that it affects the microtubules and actually turns off consciousness, so you don't feel pain. So they know that there's effect that works there. And when you're dealing with the quantum effects, it's electroweak effects, and that's vastly understudied.
Great. Well, thank you. I will look that up. That's going to be very valuable information.
Yeah.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Well, we are coming up on 9. Come on, guys. If we got any other questions.
Well, I was just thinking about that connection between mind and magic, and having nibbled around the edges of some of the chaos magicians. And they seem to have a little bit of a handle on that, of how to kind of play with your mind a little bit to let it do the work. I'm speaking in terms of some of the sigil work, where the meaning of the sigil isn't important; it's the process of getting to it.
Yeah, that's connected with Jung's ideas. How we project our unconscious perceptions out into other things is why we ascribe meanings and personalities and such like to the planets. You know, those are rocks out there. They don't have feelings as far as we know. You know, but they give us a way to be able to, around the corner, perceive our own internal workings, because we have this weird mind divided in two, that we can't look through the back of our eyeballs. You know, but that barrier back there is like a one-way mirror. The other mind looks out through us, even though we can't look back to it. So the muse, in order to get information to us, has to do a runaround around the corner of the barrier to get information to us, as if it were coming from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like, and it's like one of the hardest things in Feri for people to understand is that, you know, Fetch doesn't talk to talker. You know, your God soul doesn't talk to the rational self.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it goes in other directions.
Yeah.
And it's figuring out how to make sure all those connect so that the translation works.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know, Victor, you know, the Victor's three souls work.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, we're coming up on the last 3 minutes according to my clock.
Yep, you're right.
Do you
And
just cut it off at 6?
I just wanted to say thank you for that.
yeah,
Mhm.
unless there's conversations, we sometimes turn it off at 9 and keep on talking afterwards. But
Yeah.
but I'm just very pleased to have heard from you,
Mhm.
because you don't stop at every point. You've done something in the 60s, and you did something in the 70s, you did something in the 80s, you did something in the 90s, and you keep building, and that's,
Yeah.
and now you're doing something in the 20s. Oh my God, we're the 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a meme on Facebook the other day. It was a lot more fun being 20 in the 70s than being 70 in the 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I kind of thought I'd have more money, but
yeah. Well, I do hope maybe some of you would like taking my class.
I will
There's
be.
even more new information in it.
Now you said it's Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sundays, 2 to
Darn.
4. Yeah, at 2 to 4 Pacific Daylight Time. I picked that time because that's 10 p.m. on Sunday in England. And so for this class, I've got Phil Hazelton sitting in as another expert,
Okay.
which has been a lot of fun so far, talking with Phil about what we're going to be doing. Yeah. At one point, I had one student signed in, but it didn't work for him. Tried offering the class on Saturday because that way in Australia he'd be able to log in on Sunday morning instead of Monday morning.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you.
I'm sorry, it's not possible for me.
Yeah. I was going
I'm
to say.
sorry, it's not possible for me, but I
Are you
certainly would
recording it
enjoy
now?
hearing more stories from you anytime.
Must it be live? I think you said something about guided meditation, but
Mhm.
so
Well-
it can be recorded.
Well, that can be pre-recorded. Part of the value of doing it this way is that after people go through this experience in this particular altered state and come back out of it, then we can have a great discussion about what they actually experienced, what they saw, felt, etc. And what people experience is just, I have found quite unpredictable how many huge variants people may have with these experiences, but that's a function of how their own psychic abilities work. And you don't get that kind of discussion if you've got just pre-recorded lectures. So my wife has been encouraging me to try to get a set of pre-recorded lectures somewhere up on the net, YouTube or other things. And all right. You know, it's just technically that kind of thing is just beyond me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I hear you. Yeah, and I have a problem with that because you probably encountered this before. I have journey amnesia. I never ever remember anything that I experienced in a guided meditation, ever. And I've been to enough conferences and enough workshops that it makes me sad. But do you know Grandma Elspeth and Nibor?
Yeah.
Because I was actually weeping in the dealer's room once, and they said what's wrong, and I explained that once again everybody else was having these wonderful reactions, and it was like okay, you're now going into you go into the cave, you go into the whatever the deep thing is, and now open your eyes, and that was all I got. There was nothing in between. There is never anything. I just have amnesia. And they said, oh yeah, that happens sometimes. Don't worry, you did the work. You just don't need to know about it. But it made me feel bad.
Yeah. Well, going into that deep, you don't remember anything about it. I know about that kind of experience in other contexts that, that gets onto oathbound material actually. So, your experience is actually kind of rare and kind of special, though. Since you
I
don't
thought
remember
that it might be
obvious.
because I have no filters, and
That may
if
be
you
part
have
of
no
it.
filters, then maybe it's safer to have somebody else stop your mouth for you.
Yeah.
But it's time for us to thank you and be
Well,
very
thank you.
happy.
Yeah. People have been putting notes
do
up
you
here
have-
thanking me, and
where should people look for? Where should people look for if they want to quickly join your class at the last minute?
Okay. Well, my direct email, which is Kelly_Aidan, and spell it right, at yahoo.com, and then I can contact you right back with all the information. I keep posting them pretty much every day on Facebook and like that, but it still might be hard to find because Facebook scrolls through so fast.
Yes, it does.
Or you can go to my Facebook page and find it there. And that will give you more details about the class. And please recommend it to other people. It makes a great difference to have enough people. We have a really good discussion in the class.
Yep. But anyway, that's why I may not bother, but I will definitely be looking for at Cherry Hill because I love Cherry Hill classes. So do get involved with that and stay incarnated.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
So many people are turning in their old models for a new body, and we lose contact. So.
Well, that's a great unanswered question.
Oh, you don't remember any of your other incarnations?
No, I've never had a past life memory as far as I know. Again, it's a different type of psychic skill.
I think I have, but then I could be fooling myself, couldn't I?
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you so much. And
thank you.
I will put the contact information up when we post this on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate it very, very much. This has been enjoyable.
Chat's got, everybody is putting thank you in the chat. So
yeah.
Okay, I'm stopping the recording now. Reminding people that we have a wonderful conference coming up in November, and good night for now.
Okay, good night.